Okay, so I have a brand new server installed. I'm going to log in. This is going to give me a pretty much clean, basic computer that has nothing on it. I've already set the time zone, configured the networking. It has a 192.168.70 network and has the 10th address. I gave it a name, server 7010. And now I'm going to add roles. So I'm going to do that within Server Manager. Server Manager pops up after I close the initial configuration screens, and my roles I have none installed, so I'm going to add some. And in order to get WDS, I need to have Active Directory and DNS working, so I'm going to do that first. Active Directory needs .NET 3.5. I'm going to add those additional features by clicking Active Directory, hit Next, and Next. Now it will actually do the installation. Once it's done installing that role, I'm going to start up the DC Promo, which is the Active Directory wizard, to create Active Directory. Okay, close that. Now I can go to Active Directory Domain Services role. And it says in order to get Active Directory Domain Controller running on this server, we need to run dcpromo.exe, or we can just click this little link right here. And we're going to hit Next. Talk about Windows Server 2008. We're going to create a new forest and a new domain. And this is going to be the 7010 corp.prv for our private domain, because that does not exist. I want to point something out real quick before I get started. Go to the command prompt, type ipconfig/all, and you can see my 192.168.70.10 address. And down here underneath DNS servers, the DNS server that this computer is using is itself. Okay, so that name that I typed in will not be able to be resolved because I don't have DNS running on this computer. And we're going to see those error messages come up. And we want that to happen because it's going to check to see if this name is already in use. And it's now checking the NetBIOS name, which is sending out broadcast messages over the network to see if that domain exists. I'm going to choose server 2008 forest level and 2008 domain level. And you can read that information below about the details if you wish. It says we need to add the DNS server for this. So we're going to add DNS, which is great. It says, do you want to enable DNS? Yes, I do. I want to create that domain 7010.corp.prv. This is where it's going to actually be stored. The actual database for Active Directory is going to be stored in the Windows NTDS folder, along with the log files. And the sysfile folder has all of the network resources that the workstations will need to access. So this is going to be an actual shared folder on our network, and it will automatically configure all that. So by default, we'll leave it all C drive. You can change those if you wish. This is our restore mode password. If we need to go into restore mode to restore our Active Directory server. And we're going to finish and hit reboot upon complete. Okay, it looks like it installed. We're now logging in, as you can see, to the 7010 Corp domain. The local identity of this server is now hidden, and it is a domain controller, so the only resources that it has for Active Directory or for user accounts is all inside of Active Directory. And I'm not going to show this initial configuration screen anymore. I'm going to go right into Server Manager. And we can see the roles. We now have Active Directory. Active Directory users and computers. And there's my 7010 domain and the default user accounts, the administrator account, which we're going to be using, and the guest account, which is disabled by default. Let's take a look at what happened in DNS. It installed DNS and a forward lookup zone for the 7010 corp.prv. And inside there, you can see that it created a host record. 192.168.70.10 is my server's IP address, as well as the parent, which is the actual 7010 corp.prv, and it has the same IP as the physical server. So this server is the domain, because it is responsible for the domain. So now I'm going to add the WDS role and DHCP. DHCP and Windows Deployment Services. Next. Next. And this is the IP address for DHCP. This is the actual server that will respond to requests for IP addresses. It automatically fills this information in, and for some reason it always likes to use the local host, but we're going to change that to 192.168.70.10 because this is the server that the workstations who are requesting IP addresses will use to resolve internet names to IP addresses. Next, I have no wins on this network, and I need to add a scope. Scope name, we're going to call this anything. The starting IP address, since this is the 192.168.70 network, we're going to start our addressing at 100 and end it at 254. 8 days should be sufficient. It's using the default network mask, and my gateway is 192.168.70.1, which actually doesn't exist, but we're going to pretend it does anyways. Activate this scope is checked, so it will be active as soon as we hit next. And leave IP version 6 default settings. Use the default credentials to authorize our DHCP server, and then hit install. And it will install the WDS services and DHCP based on these settings that we set here during the wizard. Okay, close, and my DHCP server, let's just make sure that it is authorized, which it is, and it's active, scope is ready to go. Next, take a look at WDS. Here's a server, and this server is not configured. So we need to right-click the server and click Configure Server. And it's going to ask us for all of these options. Where do I want to store these images? Boot images and install images take up a lot of disk space. So we typically want to store this on a drive that has plenty of disk space. So we change this to a drive letter that has more disk space. Well, for this example, I only have my C drive. So I'm going to leave it C, but otherwise you would just change the drive letter to drive letter E, D, F, whatever extra drive you have. And you should be good to go. And it's giving you the warning, you should not put this on the same volume as your Windows system. That's fine for this example, I'm going to. If you read this carefully, it says, if DHCP is running on this server, you need to check both options. If it's not, then continue reading, and it'll tell you which one you should check and which one you shouldn't check. We're going to leave that for you to read and you to determine based on what you have going on. But we do have Dhcp running on the server, so we're checking both options. Next, we're going to choose the option Respond to all client computers known and unknown. This just makes it a lot easier for us when we're booting up our computers to allow them to boot to Pixie Boot. They will, the server will answer those requests and allow those computers to boot up the boot image. And then we're going to hit Next. And it gives us the option, do you want to add images to your server now? I'm going to uncheck that and just show you how we can do it manually. Hit Finish. So we have two images that we need to add. We need to add an install image and boot image. The boot image is the first thing we're going to add, and we're going to install the boot image from the Windows 7 DVD. So I'm going to configure my DVD settings, and I'm going to install the Windows 7 DVD. Windows 7 Enterprise. So I just inserted the Windows 7 DVD into my server, and the little Windows File Manager will pop up a little notification here. Maybe, maybe not. Alright, we're going to continue on. So to add a boot image, we're going to right-click on the boot image folder and select Add Boot Image. Oh, there's my little notification. We're just going to skip the autoplay. So it's typically located in the Sources folder of the installed DVD. So the DVD that we installed was Windows 7. Here it is. Sources folder. And we're going to be installing the boot image. Hit Open, because that's what we have selected over here, boot image. And Next. And leave it default. And it's a 64-bit boot image. It's going to copy it from our DVD now to the server. Hit Finish. Okay, so now we have a boot image, a 64-bit architecture boot image. If you want to install a 32-bit or an x86 architecture, you'd have to get an x86 DVD of Windows 7. So you need to actually get the DVD that has the 64-bit or 32-bit OS in order to get the boot image off of there. Next, we're going to install it Windows 7. We're going to add a Windows 7 install image. And it says, oh, you don't have an image group. So do you want to create one? Sure. Let's leave it the default name for now. And then we need to find a Windows install image. And that's again in the Sources folder, which we are in on the DVD drive. In the Sources folder. And there's our install image. Hit Open. And then click Next. And it says this DVD has one version of Windows 7, the Windows 7 Enterprise. Is that what you want to install? And you can check and uncheck if you have a list of different options here. So we're going to leave that checked and hit Next and Finish, and so start copying that off of the DVD onto our server. While we're waiting for that to copy, because that is the actual full image of the installed DVD, we're going to create a new virtual machine. And we are not going to use a disk. We're going to be installing Microsoft Windows 7 64-bit. Customize the settings. And we're going to change the network adapter, private to my Mac, so it's on the same network. And that workstation should be ready to go as soon as our image is done copying. Okay, now that my image is added, I'm going to hit Finish. And I should be able to boot up my workstation. So I'm going to put this out of the way. And now boot up my workstation. Hit F12. And now it's booting. As you can see, it's pulling the image from the server 192.168.70.10, and it's going to install. It's loading the boot image that we added. And as you can see, it gives you the options to install the wizard step by step, and it's prompting me something a little different. Connect to the server 7010.7010corp.prv. So this means I need to type in a username that would have administrative privileges to add this to the domain and create this computer in the domain. In order to do that, I need to type in the username and password of somebody that would have administrative privileges in this format: domain name / the user, or the user at the domain name. So my domain is 7010corp.prv/administrator. Type in my password, hit next, and it gives me my install image that I want to put on this computer. I only have one, so it's only letting me select one. I hit next, and it's giving me the option to format the hard drive and install it there. I'm going to cancel this because I want to show you some more options that we can set. So I'm going to pull this off to the side and bring up our Windows Server, which has WDS on it. And if I right-click on the server and select Properties, we can see some options here that you might be interested in. Under Pixie Response, during the wizard, when we installed WDS, we chose the option to respond to all client computers. So that's why when we boot our workstation up, we saw that that computer instantly communicated with the WDS server, and we're able to see it here. We can increase the response time if we want a little more time to hit the F12 key. Next thing, Active Directory DNS. The name of this computer when we finish the installation will be called whatever user that we create on there. So if we create an L-admin for local admin, it'll create the name of the computer will be L-admin. So we don't want that. We want this naming format to be something that makes sense. And you can see it's using different variables here. And these variables are all specified here under Help. So you can actually scroll through this and see that if you want to use a number or a name, you can change it. So I'm going to close this, and we are going to actually call our computer WKS, and we're going to go 3 digits with a number. So the %3 means show 3 numbers in sequence. So the first one would be WKS001. And down here we have computer account location. Where do we want to add these computer accounts? By default, it'll create it in the Active Directory domain that we have here. I'm going to hit OK on this. The Active Directory domain, by default, when you add users, there we go. When you add user or add computers to a domain, by default they get put into the computers OU. Well, if I want them to go into a different one, let's say I create another organizational unit underneath the 7010 Corp PRV. I'm going to create an imaged OU. So this will show that these are imaged computers. So what I have to do then is go down here to my WDS server, go to Properties, Active Directory DNS or Domain Services, and change the location where the computer counts are created. So it's my 7010, and there's my imaged folder, or imaged OU. Okay, boot, require the user press F12. For unknown, require the user press F12. So that means we have to actually press F12. The default boot image is optionally set. So you have the 64-bit and 86 or 32-bit architecture. And you can select which one you have there. Underneath client, you can enable unattended or automated installation. So you don't have to answer those questions about which hard drive to use and all those options about user accounts. You can add an XML file, and that's a little bit beyond the scope of this. You can check this so it will not join the domain after it's done installing, but we do want it to, so we're going to leave that unchecked. Under network, it uses UDP port range to stream the data. Advanced shows some domain controller information and DHCP authorization. We're going to leave those alone. Here's our multicast information. If you wanted to change the IP range for multicast traffic, you could do that here. And you can keep all the multicast clients in the same speed. And there's our DHCP settings that we initially set from the beginning. So hit OK on those options. And now we're going to get this out of the way and bring in our workstation. And now we should have those options set for us. So there it's booting up over the network. Let's go full screen here. Okay, and next, type in my 7010 corp domain. Notice this time I'm not typing in the fully qualified domain name. I type my administrator account name though. And that still worked. Still get the same options. And now we'll automatically start copying files to the hard drive and finishing the installation. Okay, now that Windows 7 is done installing, it takes us to the next out-of-box experience. We can check our language and currency and time. Leave it all default for now. Create a user account, so we're going to create an L-admin account. And I highly recommend you don't do that. I just typed in my password for my password hint, so I won't forget. Yes, I agree to the terms and licensing. Ask me about updates later. We happen to be in Central Time, US. And now I have my computer that is now a member of the 7010 Corp domain because it automatically was joined to the domain. And if I switch over to my server, you can see if I hit refresh here now, there's our Workstation 1 computer that was added. And now I can log in as administrator. And I need to add the domain in here because it, by default, so I'm logging in my 7010 Corp domain as the administrator off of my Active Directory. And everything should be working as planned. And again, we installed this operating system all from WDS over the network. There it is. Enjoy.